So, hello, everyone. Um, uh, so today we're gonna kind of do a review of what we've learned so far in science because it's been a while and we have 5 units that we've covered so far, and we're just gonna go over all of those 5 units, main points, um, and yeah. And I have a couple of questions that we can do for like homework or any remaining time in this session for today. So the first one, we're going to start off with chemistry, like the basics chemistry that we learned, which was like atoms, states of matters, and properties of matters. So the vocab list that everybody should have memorized for this unit is that atom is the smallest building block of matter, and the atom is made up. The atom has both protons and neutrons in its nucleus and electrons in its orbitals, or in the electron field. I can show you guys an image of that. Let me just quickly. I'll just go. So nucleus, remember, is the center of an atom. So this is like what's in an atom. It's the center of the atom, and it carries both protons, which have a positive charge, and neutrons, which have no charge. Charge is basically like they're just neutral. They're not positive or negative. And an atom's mass, how much it kind of weighs type of thing, but like its mass stays the same wherever you are in the world, but the mass is the atom's mass is equals the protons plus the neutrons. And the electrons have a negative charge and they surround the middle of the atom. You can see that they're in the electron cloud or electron shells. These are also called orbitals. You can see that here. They don't really contribute to the electrons, the atom's mass. And yeah, it's kind of just like a little overview for that. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay, here we go. Matter is anything that takes up space and has weight. Like we are matter, our blankets are matter, phones, books, everything and anything that takes up space and has weight is matter. Solid is a state of matter with a fixed shape and volume. So if you have an ice cube, then it has a fixed shape, which is a cube, and it has a fixed amount of volume, which is basically the length times width times height of the cube. The liquid is a state of matter with a fixed volume but no fixed shape. Like, for example, if you have a cup of water, then there's the amount of water in there stays the same no matter you transfer it into a different cup or into a plate or something. But the shape changes. Like in a cup, it stands kind of straight, more like vertically. But in a plate, it's spread out horizontally. So the shape changes. Gas is a state of matter with no fixed shape or volume. So whenever there's like air particles, they don't really have a fixed shape or volume. They kind of just float around, they're everywhere, and they're more spread apart. The atoms in gases are more spread apart. So property is a characteristic of matter which includes color, size, texture, and there's two types of properties, which is chemical properties and physical properties that we're going to go more over. Mass is the amount of matter in something. Volume is the space an object takes up, which we covered. Freezing is melting is when you change a solid to liquid. Freezing is when you change a liquid to solid, and evaporation is when you change from liquid to gas. These like melting, freezing, evaporations are kind of like how you go from one state of matter to another. Are you adding heat? Are you taking away heat? That is basically what is happening in each of the process. And you guys probably see, like, when you put ice cube outside on a hot sunny day, you can see it melting, changing from solid to liquid. Same as when you put water into the fridge, then it goes from liquid to solid and it becomes freezing. Or when you're boiling down water, basically it's just like the process of change, kind of, if you think about it. Matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. We went over that. All matter is made up of atoms. Atoms are extremely small particles. They're the smallest unit of ordinary matter. Of course, atoms have subparticles, which we went over, where like the neutrons, protons, and electrons, but atoms itself are really small particles, and they can combine to form molecules, which are just like multiple atoms together, for a simple definition, because we're not going to go that deep into it right now, but yeah. So states of matter, like we were saying, solids have fixed shape and volume, liquids have a finite volume but take the shape of their container, gases do not have a fixed shape or volume. And you can see a little image of how the particles or the atoms in the solid, liquid, and gas are like. So in a solid object, the atoms are packed tightly together. So take a book or whatever you guys have next to you guys, and you can see that the atoms are hard. That's why they're like little liquids are more flowy. And then in the gas, what are properties of matter? Properties of matter are liquid properties. These can be observed or measured without changing the substance identity. This means that even if you take a piece of paper and you rip it apart and you cut it up, it's still paper. So even though it looks different, it is still paper. Like, no matter what you do to it, it's still paper. Chemical properties are, however, is when you describe how a substance interacts with the other substance, and this can only be observed during a chemical change. So it would be like a steel, or okay, I'll give another example. When you burn a piece of wood, you can't change it back to the wood. Or when you burn a piece of paper, the paper becomes ash, right? There's no more paper. You cannot make it paper. For physical properties, you can, for the paper, when you cut it up, you can tape it back together, you know? But chemical properties, you can't get it back to the original substance, like when you burn the paper. You know what I mean? Without it having like another interaction with the substance. You can tell if it's a physical property by some indicators, which is usually if there's only just a color change. Actually, I think this is someone. My bad. Color change is actually an indicator for chemical properties. But size and shape, if they change, then it's still physical. Mass, amount of matter, that's physical. Volume is physical properties. Density is physical property. Density is basically just how much mass is in it per the unit of volume. And texture is also a physical property, which is like smooth, rough, soft, like basically how it feels. And then state of matters like solid, liquid, gas are also physical properties. Some chemical properties are flammability, ability to burn, which is basically the ability to burn, reactivity, how it reacts with acids, bases, oxygens, etc. pH level, which is basically how acidity or basic it is. Acidity is a lemon is very acidic. You know how it burns? That's basically what acidity is, and bases are the opposite of when like these are just really simple definitions. You're not expected to know the pH level and stuff like that. But bases are the opposite of acidic. Um, and toxicity is how harmful it is to a living organism. This includes like poisons and like basically if these are happening, then you can tell that there is a chemical reaction occurring, like toxicity, oxidization, tendency to rust or corrode. And I was actually wrong when I don't know where my brain was, but physical property, color is a physical property because, for example, if you have a red apple, it is still an apple even though it like changes, like starts, even if there's a different color, it's still an apple. Like a red apple is still an apple even if you observe its color. You know what I mean? So that's why I was wrong. Solid. So from solid to liquid, you melt, and from liquid to gas, you vaporize. These are like the changes in states of matter. And then from gas to liquid, you condense, condensation. That's how it goes from gas to liquid. And liquid to solid is freezing. We went over this a little. And that was everything for the first unit. We're going to do practice problems at the end. So, yeah. So, what are living things? We know that all living things are made up of matter. But, low-key, everything is made up of matter. So, grow and develop. What do living things specifically do is that they grow and develop. Living things get better. They get bigger, and they change as they grow. Example, a seed grows into a plant. They reproduce. They make more of their kind. They make little babies or new plants. A flower makes seeds for new flowers. Use energy. They need energy to move, grow, or stay alive. They get energy from different things. Plants get energy from sunlight, and they create their own energy through a process called photosynthesis. People get their energy from food. That's why we eat a lot of healthy food. Everything is made up of cells, which are little building blocks they're kind of like atoms, but they're bigger than atoms because they happen in our body. We're made up of a bunch of cells. And these cells carry out different processes, and together the cells make up tissues and all those fun stuff that make up our body. They respond to their environment, so they respond to stimuli, so they react to things that are happening around them. A plant, for example, a sunflower plant bends towards sunlight. They get rid of waste. Living things remove things they don't need by sweating or going to the bathroom or giving off oxygen and water like plants. And this kind of goes with use energy, but they need food, water, or nutrients to stay alive. So grow and develop reproduce, use energy made of cells, respond to their environment, get rid of waste, and like need nutrients and stuff. All of these things we do. So that's why we classify it as living things. When like a plant or maybe like a bird, these are all living things because they do all of these steps. This is how scientists figure out if it's a living thing or not. When they're like when they see new things, they're able to tell. A rock doesn't do all these stuff. A rock doesn't grow and develop. It doesn't reproduce. So that's why you won't have like a lot of, yeah. Sometimes an object can do some of these things but not do all of them. And that won't, if it only does some of these things, then it's not living. Like for example, if you have like a toy that reacts to like your environment, just because it's reacting, like just because you press a button and reacts or something, doesn't mean it is a living thing. Non-living things are things that are not alive. They do not grow, do not need food or water, do not breathe, cannot make more of their own kind, or they only satisfy some of the criteria to be a living things. They also don't change on their own or respond to their surroundings. They have to satisfy all the criteria to be a living thing. That's kind of important. So what are cells? All living things, big or small, are made up of cells. A cell is the basic unit of life, like a tiny building block, but for life. Some living things like bacteria have just one cell. Others, like humans, plants, and animals, have millions or trillions of cells. All cells come from existing cells. Cells essentially divide and make copies of themselves continuously through a process called mitosis or meiosis. Mitosis and meiosis, really. And there's like a bunch of steps involved when a cell reproduces or splits apart, more like. It like makes a copy of itself. A cell makes a copy of itself, and then it splits like apart. It splits apart and makes a copy of itself. That's what I'm saying. We can only see cells with a microscope, and here are how cells in animals look like, and cells in plants look like. Kind of see that. Okay, continuing on, we're gonna talk about different types of living things. So, more like living animals. So vertebrates are animals with a backbone. Okay, vertebrates are animals with a backbone. They have an internal skeleton. They have bones inside their bodies. And that's basically what are vertebrates. So some types of vertebrates. So these are just classifications. So there's, first of all, there's living things, and then in living things there's like animals and like excluding plants and stuff. These are like animals, birds, which include like birds and all these humans and everything. And in those animals, there's different types of sections like vertebrates and invertebrates. And each of those sections, like vertebrates and invertebrates, there's a couple of groups like mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. You guys probably know mammals are like humans, dogs, dolphins, bats, anything that give birth through live birth. Like they don't have eggs, unlike birds, which do have eggs. They lay eggs, so those are birds and not mammals. Reptiles are cold-blooded, scaly skin, and they have like a scaly skin. They do lay eggs, but on land, and they're kind of like snakes, lizards, turtles. Amphibians live in both water and land, so those are like frogs, salamanders, newts. Fish are cold-blooded, they live in water, and they have gills, scales like salmon, goldfish, sharks. So these are the groups of vertebrates. Invertebrates are animals without backbones. They make up 97% of animal species, and many have exoskeletons or soft bodies. So they don't really have an inner skeleton. Their skeleton's kind of outside, like Like, for example, worms don't have a skeleton. They don't have a skeleton. That's why they have really soft bodies. And common groups of invertebrates include insects, which are butterflies, ants, bees, arachnids, which are spiders, scorpions, ticks, mollusks like snails, clams, octopuses, worms, earthworms, leeches, um, echinoderms like starfish and sea urchins. So, animal interactions. How do these vertebrates and invertebrates and non living things interact with each other? A predator is a consumer that actively hunts, captures, and eats other animals to survive. These are like cheetahs, tigers, lions, and they often have adaptations, which are characteristics that help them be the best of the best, help them get the food and nutrients they need to survive, help them catch prey. And prey are organisms that are hunted, captured, and eaten by predators. These are usually more weaker than predators, and they have a different set of characteristics that help them hide and run away to avoid being eaten. Food chain is a linear sequence that shows how energy and nutrients move from one organism to another. It begins with producers, plants, that goes to herbivores, plant eaters, and then to carnivores or omnivores. Herbivores are plant eaters, carnivores or omnivores. Carnivores are meat eaters, and omnivores eat both meat and plants. Humans are omnivores, by the way. Producers, like I said, are plants. They're like where the entire process starts, where an animal eats the producer, which is the plants, and these animals that eat the first producer are called primary consumers, and animals that eat the primary consumer are called secondary consumers, and so on and so forth, until the apex predator, which is like the last, the highest animal, they die, and their body gets decomposed, and then the process repeats where producers are grown from decomposed. You can see the image here of how the food chains kind of look like. It basically shows how the bird eats the grasshopper, the snake eats the bird, and the owl eats the snake. Every organism has a role in the ecosystem, and if one species is removed or its population changes too much, the entire food chain can be disrupted, affecting predators, prey, and the environment. So if the snakes were taken out in this food chain, then the owl does not have anything to eat. So then the owl population dies, right? That's not good, because we don't want that to happen. Such drastic changes can change how the owls interact with other things. Or if the bluebird dies, then the grasshoppers will increase because nobody's eating the grasshoppers now, and the snakes will decrease because they don't have food. They don't have any. The bluebirds are all gone, so they're hungry. And that's basically what it is. An ecosystem is just made up of living things, non-living things, all in the same habitat. Like I said, adaptations are body parts or behaviors that help organisms survive and reproduce in its environment. These traits improve an organism's ability to find food, stay safe, or cope with weather and habitat changes. Some physical adaptations include claws, sharp teeth, thick fur, or camouflage, and behavioral adaptations include migration, hibernation, and hunting strategies. Camouflage helps animals blend in to avoid predators. Sharp teeth help carnivores catch and eat prey. And herding behavior, which is when animals are kind of in a group, they travel together, helps animals protect each other from danger. And these are some physical adaptations. Physical and behavioral, because herding is a behavioral adaptation. So now that we talked about animals, we're going to talk about another type of living thing called plants, basically. And the vocab list is photosynthesis, the process by which plants make food using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. Chlorophyll, the green pigment in plants that causes sunlight for photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide, a gas in the air that plants use during photosynthesis. Oxygen, a gas released by plants during photosynthesis, essential for animals to breathe. And lastly, roots, plant part that absorbs water and nutrients from soil. And then some parts of, roots, stem, leaves, flower are all part of the all part of the plant. So stem supports the plant and transports water and nutrients. Leaves are plant part where photosynthesis mostly happens. Flowers, the part of the plant that helps with reproduction. Nutrients, substances that the plants absorb from soil to grow. Sunlight, the energy source plants use for photosynthesis. These should all be familiar terms. Nothing really new there. So like I was saying, roots absorb the water from the ground. Stems support and transport water and nutrients through the xylem and phloem. Those are basically how the water and nutrients get transported in the plant. Like those are the little pipes type of thing. You can think about it like that. Leaves make food using sunlight. Flowers are where the reproduction occurs, like pollination. So the life cycle of a plant is usually that the seeds are planted. When you plant the seeds, little roots grow, and then it sprouts, and it becomes a baby plant, and then an adult plant, and then the seeds fall, and when the seeds fall, they're planted again. And here you can see that the flower, fruit, leaves, stem, and seeds, roots of a plant. And also another image that shows the parts of the plant. So those are the important parts of a plant parts and their functions, and the process of photosynthesis, which is basically, we covered this, but plant makes food. Plant makes food by light, carbon dioxide, carbohydrates all kind of come together, and water, and they produce oxygen. Humans breathe in oxygen and we give off carbon dioxide. So both us and the plants interact like that because we're helping each other, right? They need carbon dioxide and we need oxygen. So this is our most recent unit that we learned last month, which is natural disasters. A natural disaster is a major event caused by Earth's natural processes that can change the landscape and impact human life. Think of it as too much weather or the Earth doing some spring cleaning. Blizzards are a severe winter storm with high winds and heavy blowing snow that makes it hard to see. Drought is a long dry period with little to no rain, causing water shortages. Flash floods are a lot of rain in a short amount of time that causes rapid flooding. Heat wave is a long period of unusually hot and often humid weather. Hurricane is a huge rotating storm that forms over warm ocean water with very strong winds and heavy rain. Or tornado, twister, a violently rotating column of air that touches the ground, usually coming from a thunderstorm. Vocab, continuation, wildfire, a large uncontrollable fire that spreads quickly through forests or grasslands. Avalanche, a large fast-moving slide of snow, ice, and rock down the side of a mountain. Earthquake, a sudden violent shaking of the ground caused by movement deep inside the earth. Landslide, the rapid sliding of dirt, rock, and mud down a slope. Tsunami, a series of giant ocean waves usually caused by underwater earthquake. Volcano/eruption, an opening in the Earth's crust that causes hot magma, ash, and gases to escape. Natural disaster again. We already covered that. Evacuation, leaving a dangerous area to go to a safer space. Meteorologist, a scientist who studies and predicts the weather. Seismic wave, energy vibrations caused by an earthquake. And the aftermath is what happens after a natural disaster has happened. Images of some of the natural disasters. You can take a little quick look. Earthquake, volcano, tornado, tsunami, hurricane, drought, wildfire, landslide, flood. Each of these disasters usually you can expect in climates that are more likely to stimulate these. Like, you won't see there being a big avalanche, which is like snow. Oh, I don't think I included avalanche in here, but you won't see a blizzard happening in the middle of summer in Africa, right? You won't see a lot of these things happening unless it's specific to that climate. So for the rest of class, we're gonna be going over the review questions that we have here. So I'm gonna give like 5-ish minutes for each part, and you guys can pause the stream if needed. But I'll give like a couple of minutes for you guys to answer these questions, write in your notebook. I want everybody to be answering these questions, and I will go over the answers. Like 3-ish minutes for this one, and then yeah, 5. I'll give 5-ish. So I'm going to go over the answers for the first 7 questions. Um, the smallest, what is an atom? B, the smallest building block of matter. Which state of matter keeps its shape and volume? That is a solid. Name the 3 main states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. Name one physical property scientists use to describe matter. This can be color, size, shape, mass, texture, hardness, or volume. Any of the things you can put down. What is a cell? The basic unit of life. Name 2 things all living things need to survive. I wrote, well, I said like water, air. Could also put food, sunlight, or space. Which of the following is non-living? The answer is a rock. I'm going to give a couple minutes for this as well. Okay, I'm going to go over the answers now. The answer is B, vertebrates. A habitat. We didn't really go over this, but I did mention it. It's basically a place where an animal lives to gets food, water, and shelter. What is a producer? A plant that makes its own food. Which part of the plant absorbs water from the soil? Roots. What is photosynthesis? The process by which plants use to make food using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. The food comes in the form of glucose or sugar. What do plants use from the sun to make food? They use energy. Sunlight is a form of energy. Which of these is a natural disaster? The answer is tornado B. What should you do during an earthquake? Ideally, you would want to go into under a table or like a desk and kind of drop, cover, and hold on to like a desk, a chunky table. Kind of stay away from windows and protect your head. During a tornado warning, where is the safest place to go? basement or interior room without windows. We don't want the windows to shatter. And yeah, those are basically the answers. They should have been pretty simple. And then take a couple seconds to go over this, but other than that, we are basically done for the day, so you guys can pause and look over this. But I am going to be leaving. Slide number 109. Sorry, I did chat. So I'll go over slide number 109 because I think someone said that they wanted to go over that again. So natural disasters are a major event by the Earth's natural process that causes the landscape to change and impact human life, mostly negatively. And some of these natural disasters include blizzards, which are a severe winter storm with high winds and heavy blowing snow, so a lot of snow. Drought, when there's no rain, it's very dry, there's no water. Flash flood, very fast flood that happens with heavy rains in a short amount of time. Heat wave, it usually comes along with like a drought when there's a long period of unusually hot and humid weather. Hurricanes, a huge rotating storm that forms over warm ocean water with very strong winds and heavy rains. Tornadoes, also called twisters, are a violently rotating column of air that touches the ground, usually coming from a thunderstorm. So that's basically it for today. Thank you for paying attention and listening. See you guys next